Expect the best used car deals guaranteed. Visit arnoldclark.com.
Welcome to Peter and Roughie's Football Show, sponsored by Arnold Clark. It's Tuesday the 18th of August. I'm Peter Martin, Alan Rough, Darren Jackson and Hugh MacDonald are here with me on the show. You can like, share and follow us on our Facebook, and you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's as simple as that. Quite a lot to talk about on the show, and we will try and highlight as many of your points as possible. If you want to talk about your favourite team or any of the stories that are out today, not only in the press but right across all the social media as well, we'll do our very best to discuss them with you. So with that in mind, if you've got someone in your mind that you think from your club should have a statue outside but doesn't have a statue, why not throw in a few examples to us? This is off the back, of course, of Manchester City are going to put a statue outside the Etihad, Roughie, of David Silva. And I think he's going up also with Vincent Kompany. And I thought to myself, well, I could see the point in Vincent Kompany, but I'm not quite sure I can see. I'm not quite sure I can see David Silva ahead of Bell, Lee, and Summerby. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I would put possibly Tony Brook into that category as well. Dennis Stewart, away players. No, I don't agree with that one at all. Company, yeah, you'd have to tell me how many years he was at Man City, but I think there was a lot of older players of a longer service than that. And let's be serious, surely that's what a statue is all about. How long you've been at the club, what kind of loyalty you've shown to the club, and unfortunately that's sadly missed in the nowadays. So no, I would have thought there'd been other people would jump in front of these two.
Hugh, you're a little bit older and wiser. Before I get to Darren, that's a good shout, Tony Brook as well, isn't it?
I thought he was. I thought Ruffy said Tony Brook there, and I was wondering if he was Beecher's brother. Tony Brook is a good shout, but I just think see for modern players as well, they're not allied to one club the way players used to be. There's an argument. I once talked to Manchester City's greatest historian. He became a director of the club, a man who sadly passed away, but a fabled character in the history of Man City. He knew everything about him, and he always said that Bobby Johnson was a better player. The member of the famous five who went down to Man City. He always said he was a better player than David Silva, though he really rated Silva. I just think the statue thing, when it comes to Silva and even Kompany, it just gets a bit worn, Peter. I think to get a statue, you have to be like the guy I've got in my T-shirt today. You've got to be a Best Law or a Charlton at Manchester United. You've got to be a John Gregg at Rangers. You've got to be a Jimmy Johnston and a Billy McNeil at Celtic. I mean, otherwise, where do you stop? They'll not be able to get into the park for statues. I mean, but mind you, what do I know? Fulham put up a statue to Michael Jackson once, so.
I mean, that's the good point about it here, Darren, and Hugh is absolutely right about it. I mean, statues sometimes I think we're dealing with the last week, last month, rather than thinking about, as Hugh mentioned, the longevity and the contribution.
I think you're right. I think the statues outside the stadiums are rightly so. You look at Shearer, you look at Sir Bobby Robson. If you go across the other side of the city, Peter, there should be a statue, but possibly Ryan Giggs, 13 titles, Paul Scholes, Roy Keane. Now, David Silva's an absolute genius, a wonderful player. But as we say, it's real legends to the club that have been there, not just 10 years, 15 years, sometimes their whole life. And it's a strange one, even though, as I say, he is a genius. But I would say Ryan Giggs is worth more a statue than David Silva.
Yeah, it's a great talking point because I'll tell you we've absolutely cracked it on here because people are saying Davy Cooper. Some people are talking about Henrik Larsson or Fergus McCann. I think there's more. Henry Boyle's just mentioned Fergus McCann. I think there's more a case at Celtic for a Fergus McCann than there is for a Henrik Larsson. But I agree. I wouldn't even. I mean, Keane, Scholes, no chance. Giggs. I think it's got to be someone that's either groundbreaking. Somebody. I know. I understand. No, but I understand.
His whole career at Manchester United.
No, I get that. I mean, I absolutely get it.
A legend.
I absolutely get that. I totally get that. But my own, and this is, I'm not blowing him out of the water, Ryan Giggs. I'm talking about someone whose stature is either, they've been groundbreaking, longevity, as you say, Ryan Giggs, Sir Alex Ferguson, because they've done something that is unbelievable with titles, European Cup, Sir Matt Busby, the same. And I think John Gregg, who goes alongside John Gregg, when you look down through the history at Rangers, who goes I mean, I was looking at Hibs and I think, Roughie, what about the famous five? I mean, the famous five are worthy of it, surely, at Hibs. Or is Alan Stubbs or David Gray?
Yeah, I mean, you could seriously be looking at a lot of clubs, and let's, in all honesty, a lot of the clubs are 100 years old. So you could have lots of statues. If you really went and delved into it, as Hugh has just done there, you could delve into players that not in our lifetime, who have done something at the club. But it's a difficult one, to pin your hat on, because I'm sure every name that somebody throws up, somebody will have another name. And Hibs, you've got the famous five. You've got Pat Stanton. You've got that era. You could go on and on and on. I'm sure every club. It'd be interesting when you get there. I'm sure a lot of the guys will be putting through names of Motherwell and Kilmarnock and Dundee United and the likes. So every club will have three or four players who could have a statue outside.
Christopher says of Aberdeen, Willie Miller needs a statue. I actually agree with that. I think Willie Miller and Sir Alex Ferguson should have a statue up at Pittodrie, Hugh.
I wouldn't disagree with that. See, it's a very hard thing to judge, Peter. It's almost like an instinctive thing in the pit of your stomach, because I think with David Silva, frankly, he's a fantastic player. One of the great players to would get into a Premiership select for the existence of the Premiership. Don't get me wrong, but for me, it doesn't chime right in the bit myself. Whereas if you said to me, right, there'll be a statue of Willie Miller at Aberdeen, you've got to say, well, because I mean, what Willie Miller was up there and continues to be in terms of an icon was that when the club went through its best period that it will ever, doesn't matter how long Aberdeen will exist, best period ever, not only was he the captain, but he was the leader of what the Americans call the franchise. Going on to a Fergus McCann thing, I think some of the Celtic has been strapped because of Fergus McCann's innate humility, that he just doesn't want to be involved in any discussions about that. And I always suggested a way out. What they should just do is on the Celtic way walking up, wherever it is, they should just have a small plinth with a bronze bonnet on it. And that would just tell everybody, why the stadium they're walking up to is there and who to thank. And I think that would solve maybe Fergus's reluctance to be a statue. But the big scandal, of course, in Scottish football, and there has been no bigger scandal, we know, is that why there isn't not only a statue to Roughie, but the whole stadium should be surely should be shaped into a Roughie save. They should just be. I mean, surely that's the scandal we've got to address today, Peter.
Yeah, I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, by the way, they should have a statue of Roughie on the goal line because it just to remind people that he never come off his line.
Just have it. Just a line. Just a line.
But Peter,
Peter. Go on, Hugh.
Peter, I don't want to be rude to you and all that, but We tried that against Brazil and Spain, and that Roughie statue just didn't work. So
Yeah.
I think we've got to move on.
Yeah,
No,
absolutely.
I would.
Well,
Since you're
like,
talking about
Peter, if you're talking
I
about
would.
if you're talking about players who are worthy of something, Hegarty, Neri, Malpass, Sturrock. Now, I'm not saying put statues up to them all, but they're as worthy as a statue as anybody. The career they had at Dundee United under Wee Jim.
Jim McLean's worthy of a statue, to be honest with you. Jim McLean is absolutely worthy of a statue.
100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Listen, it's
And
one of those
surely-
days. Hugh, see that gadget I gave you? Have you turned it on? This has got to be the first time that you are breaking up, and you know your little the Chinese
my 5G.
Yes, have you turned that
Yep,
on?
it's down. It's down. And it's always on, Peter. Always
Good
on.
stuff. I always like the whole
And flickering.
That's good, because I always like the whole of China to monitor what you're doing, to be honest with you. You know, now that they're set to be bumped right out of the country, but I always like to keep it monitoring you. Anyway, apart from anything else, you can give us your thoughts on statues. Of course, I think we did have someone point out there that David Cooper has a statue in Hamilton. Jimmy Johnson has one in View Park, and he has one at Celtic Park. But there are lots of great candidates. It's a good talking point, because David Silva certainly caught me on the hop when I read that this morning. Thanks to Gary Adam, who says it's raining out in Ohio. Welcome to our world, Gary, to be perfectly honest with you. And lots of people joining us on the programme. Absolutely delighted that you could join us, to like, share and follow us on our Facebook. Of course, Celtic play KR Reykjavik in the qualifier of the Champions League tonight. 4 of them to come. Some might agree or disagree with that, but nevertheless, Neil Lennon just has to get on with it. And our reporter, Gabriel Antoniazzi, looks ahead to this tie.
Celtic begin their quest for the Champions League group stage this evening in their opening qualifier against KR Reykjavik. The Scottish champions team is near full strength, although Lee Griffiths is still absent, and they can now turn to new signing Albion Ajeti, although he will start on the bench. Manager Neil Lennon is wary of the one-legged nature of the tie.
It's the new norm, really, isn't it? You know, again, UEFA have made it possible. It's been exciting, there's no question of that, but if you're on the other end of a defeat, then I'm sure it's pretty hard to consume sometimes. They've been thrown up a lot of strange and different types of games.
It will be a strange encounter no matter what happens, as the first European game behind closed doors in the country, but fullback Greg Taylor insists the players will be up for it, even without their fans.
We want to qualify, and that's our motivation there. We will miss our fans, of course. We're all the 12th man for us, and certainly on a European night they're superb, but it's not an excuse for us.
Two sides have met before in both Callum McGregor and manager Rolly Dyler's first full matches for the club, with the Hoops progressing 5-0 on aggregate. Reykjavik currently sit 4th in the Icelandic division, 5 points behind the leaders after 9 games, and they lost 2-1 at the weekend. Celtic's last 2 Champions League qualifying campaigns have ended in misery, but this represents a comfortable opportunity to progress to the next round, where they could face either Ferencváros or Djurgårdens.
Usually they can be quite dull affairs, Darren, to be perfectly honest with these early qualifiers. This one, however, has got a wee bit of an added, edge to it in the fact that it's a one-off game.
It is, yeah. I think that's good. I think it will be exciting. I think the Celtic boys will be absolutely desperate in a game, Peter, and it's great for Celtic. It's great at home, because we spoke about Livingston yesterday. If it's away, it's a dry pitch, but they've got the big pitch at Celtic Park. It'll be watered. The ball will be getting moved about, and at some point, with it being a one-off game, they're going to have to come out. I think they'll pack the defence as long as they can, but they're going to have to come out at some point. But it's just getting an early goal and have a making name come out. But I fancy Celtic strongly.
Yeah, it's one of those games where you're actually thinking to yourself, Roughie, how many should Celtic be winning this by?
Yeah, I think in days gone by it probably would have been, but I mean, I think a lot of these teams have improved enormously, not to the extent I still think they will get thumped tonight, but there is a lot of the team. You don't see the 6 and 7 and the 8-0 anymore. It's usually, as Dan said, they're usually pretty organised. They try and sit in but I would expect Celtic to win this one. It surprises me that the Icelandic club sides are not the greatest when you look at their national side. So I'm guessing that most of their best players don't play in Iceland. I would guess they're all playing with top clubs in Europe, but it's a strange one because the Icelandic national team is particularly good.
Yeah, absolutely. You give us your thoughts on how you think this tie is going to go tonight. It's certainly going to be unusual again at Celtic Park. European nights, usually you'll get a good crowd for a game of this stature, but it'll be very, very quiet indeed. Interestingly enough, off the back of that, Neil Lennon's been commenting, Hugh, on the suggestion from some quarters that it's total nonsense to suggest that this penalty that's coming the club's way with regards to Bolingoli and his departure to Spain and then returning a day later, there is a penalty coming, but Neil Lennon not happy with Ron Gordon of Hibernian suggesting a points deduction. He thinks that's nonsense.
To be fair to Ron Gordon, the way I read it was that Ron Gordon was thinking that, over future infractions, not over past infractions, Peter. Well, that's certainly the way I read it. I think it'd be. I've said before on the programme, you can't bring in retrospective penalties and then just make it up on the hoof. That's impossible to do, because otherwise, massive agendas come into play, particularly when it comes to points. If you can imagine the furore that calling the league called, imagine starting to call points on various clubs during the season. By the way, these clubs would, they would push to be included Rangers in this because of the practice game against Dundee United when players weren't tested. So I think what will happen, Peter, is at the moment, there'll be a financial penalty or whatever for Bolingoli and for the Aberdeen players. But I think there will be discussions, and very strong discussions between chairmen and chief executives of what they should do going forward. What should be the sanctions allowable going forward? I think that's the next argument.
But with all due respect, sometimes I think Scottish football, it's not that it descends into lunacy, Darren. It's that it continues down the road of lunacy. Because, to even suggest that we start to think about docking points to clubs for individuals who do indeed go rogue, or a collective group who go out to a pub when they shouldn't have, to start deducting points is a nonsense in my book. It's a fine. It's a fine that would have been a fine in the last 40, 50 years. If you had suggested 10, 20 years ago that a Walter Smith or a Martin O'Neill side were going to get docked points, Darren, they'd have looked at you as if you were insane.
Yeah, no, we had this conversation yesterday, Peter, and it's got to be a fine, because it is individuals. It's not as if they were with the clubs and they went out and on a night out and then came back, and that they're away on maybe a pre-season trip and they've gone out. So it's got to be a fine, but everyone wants to jump on the bandwagon and dock clubs points and all that, is because, as you say, it's an individual, and then the individual should be dealt with.
Yeah,
I don't know. Pierre, I don't know if you've noticed, but most of the new ideas, or the ideas that people are coming up with, are now the new foreign owners, whether American or Canadian or whatever. They have got different views in the way we run our game. They're bringing a new idea to it. When we saw the boy up in Aberdeen coming up with some, good ideas as far as he's concerned, 6:30 kickoffs and all that. We saw Lachlan at Ayr United. We saw the boy at Dundee, and now we're getting it at Hibs. I just think it's a new era of owners who are want to pitch their tuppence within here.
Yeah, good or bad, Roughie?
Bad as far as I'm concerned. I don't think any of them's come up with any good ideas at all. And I think Hugh's right. The person that will decide what the fine is in this will be our wee man for the SPFL, who will be scouring that rule book as we speak. The 1,000 and 2,000 pages of it, and he'll find somewhere in that book that they're going to get hit with, and that's what they'll get hit with. A fine or suspension or whatever.
Well, I think, Hugh, and you can argue this point with me, but I think of all the people that we've talked to on this programme, I did actually warm to the suggestion from Lachlan Cameron when he was on the programme way months ago, right at the start of lockdown. He suggested some kind of commissioner, which I think would be, I think we need to look to someone as an out-and-out leader who takes away this constant bickering and backstabbing that goes on. And then, of course, the fact is, with no leadership comes this rudderless ship that we have at the moment that stumbles from one stupid idea to the next. And, of course, you've always got the other one, which is when you've got no leaders, you've got a whole host of people who start listening to fans who are giving it, yeah, let's dock points. Let's make it really interesting. Let's dock Celtic 6 points and, you know, for the stupidity of one player. I mean, the whole thing's a nonsense. It needs somebody to steer it who is an out-and-out leader, I think.
See, the minute, Peter, that you mentioned the word Lachlan, I smiled, is that we've had this conversation on the show. We've had a conversation in private, socially distanced in private, of course, just in case there's any suspensions up for grabs. And while the idea of a commissioner is a really great idea that falls into the Scottish madness, right? And the madness is this, Peter. A commissioner is a fantastic way forward for Scottish football. Absolutely. I think irrefutably. Has absolutely no chance of being brought in. Because for it to be brought in, it has to be voted for. And nobody in the Scottish, certainly in the Scottish top leagues, is going to hand whatever power they have over to some unknown figure. It's just not going to happen.
John Stevenson, John, who's a regular viewer of ours, good lad from Edinburgh, says, Peter, it's not 50 years ago, and the penalty for another club player, etc., breaking the rules is disastrous for all Scottish football. Yes, I agree with you, John. It is in this instance, but it's certainly not in the rule book to suddenly start saying, let's dock them points. So that's a no-no. It's a non-starter. Although some people would say, relegating Hearts, Partick Thistle and Stranraer wasn't in the rule book, but they managed to do that. A significant deterrent, John goes on to say, is required, and points deduction going forward would appear to be severe enough. Well, it might be severe enough, and again, John, I can't rule out your thoughts on it, because who knows where we're going with Scottish football. I don't think that situation we've just witnessed over the last couple of weeks, Roughie, is worthy of starting to say you're going to get points deducted, because you know, if you're starting to put penalties in for the conduct of players, and I always go back to Gordon Strachan on this, Roughie, why would you hold up any player in football across the world as some kind of person that you should follow their lead on? Because, you know, they're not, they might be role models, but they shouldn't be.
No, I think the clubs have acted very, very quickly in this one, and Aberdeen in particular. I do think they'll have fined these players the hardest fine that they can get, and I'm sure Neil Lennon will do likewise at Parkhead. So, no, I think the clubs have acted very sensibly about this. You could see that both clubs were hurt, that it was their players. They had to put out statements, and they would have preferred it to be other clubs, you know, and that's the way it is. So I think the players themselves will be punished, have been already punished just now, and will be punished again. So it's how much you want to hang them out. I think they'll be hung out enough when this is finished.
Yeah, big hi to Stuart Ramsey, who's watching the programme on Facebook from a damp West Midlands. Always good to have people from near and far following us. We've been all over the world with people chipping in, of course, Ohio with Gary Adam, and we've even had Vietnam in there. We've got a Hibby from Vietnam, no less. That's how far the fans come in. Thailand, Mexico as well. Quite a lot of Thailand fans following us now, just basically because they recognise Roughie over a regular period of time. Also, lots of people giving us their thoughts on statues. and the like. So we will mention some of the names coming in who should get a statue. One guy says Roughie was a statue. Roughie, I think they're being unkind to you. I don't think some of the younger guys actually know how good a keeper you were. I think they need a lesson from their dad.
Yeah, I think we have to throw a question out there. Tell us another player who's in 5 Hall of Fames.
Yeah, Roughie, I was paying you a compliment, not necessarily for you to bum your own load after it, to be honest with you.
No, it's the only thing I could think of.
Yeah, exactly.
Roughie, you're 100% right. You don't have to show the kids anything. Just mention 3 World Cups. That's enough.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, absolutely. I mean, it's a select few, Darren, to be perfectly honest with you, that have been to. I think we did establish though, Roughie, that Jim Leighton's been to 4 World Cups.
Yeah, I keep going on. And any time I see Jim, I just can't get my head around why he decided to stop at 92. There was no reason. I know he fell out with maybe Craig and the goalkeeping coach or something, but to go on and get 100 caps as a goalkeeper would be absolutely incredible. And you could never, ever take that away from him. Obviously, 92 is incredible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Roughie, I was lucky enough. Sorry, I was lucky enough to play with him at Hibs. And obviously he had his hard time at Man United, went to Dundee, came to Hibs, and he was just sensational. And you're right, even in the World Cup before it, when Andy pulled out, probably didn't think he was going to play. And his performances, he was just incredible goalkeeper. And you're right, he should have gone on, he should have had 100 caps.
Yeah. But to be fair, Hugh, at 92, lumbago eventually set in and his joints seized. Yeah. So there was no point in him playing on.
And I do believe it was a riot in the 92 caps after the games. You know, absolute privilege to go out with and have a beer with. It's just life and soul.
Steady now. Now, here's a good one. Go on, Hugh.
I was just thinking about, though, with the whole thing about statues, that, Rishi Sunak, who's so keen and jumpstart the economy, should jumpstart sculptors and get every club that had Darren Jackson have a statue of Darren outside every club. That would get the economy going again.
Well, to be fair, by the way, they have done that, Hugh. It was a Chinese army that was buried underneath the ground. They found them all, so they just used them around all the clubs.
Appreciate that, Hugh. Thank you.
Yeah, Mark Martinez says a statue for Tommy Walker, Willie Bald at Hearts. Yeah, I mean, Con Bald and Warhaw for me is certainly a 3 at Hearts that should be worth it. Of course, Robbo will eventually get a statue.
Yeah, Robbo.
Oh, Robbo deserves a statue. They'll never get never get a bigger goal scorer than the wee man.
I think you're right to say you said Dave Mackay.
Oh, Dave Mackay was great. Yeah.
I mean, but Robbo. Yeah. Robbo definitely for Hearts.
Yeah, Joe Filippi. Are we just ripping the back end out of it now? Okay.
We're being serious. You're being serious.
Sorry.
Robbo's got to be.
Oh, Rob was in there, but I was just being facetious with Joe Filippi. Anyway, apart from anything else, I must apologise.
Also have a statue.
We're going to try
also
and
have a statue that actually fans can throw things at. Maybe a Romanov statue just at the front. In the olden days, you used to chip things at people. So
to be fair, if you did it for a quid, they'd wipe out their deck completely at Tynecastle. But anyway, apart from anything else, apologies. We are trying to sort out this stupid situation with Facebook with the subtitles. We've tried again to rectify it with them. We will actually get to the bottom of it and take the subtitles off. If it's annoying you, you can do it manually, but we will get to it, believe me. Thank you very much. Lots of people are putting some really good suggestions for statues, your favourite club, somebody who deserves it. We've talked about Jim McLean, Willie Miller as well. The famous 5 at Hibs might be a good shout as well, but you never know. It's up to you. Listen, talking of Aberdeen, Darren, Ross McCrory, he's signed a loan deal and then eventually 3 years After that, full-time deal with Aberdeen from Rangers. Rangers get £350,000. Good move?
I think it's a good move for him, Peter, yes. I liked Ross McCrory. I think Ross's biggest problem is people didn't know if he was going to be a centre-half, a right-back, a centre-mid. I think he will be a number 6. I think Aberdeen have been missing that since Shinnie left. They brought Bryson in hoping that he was going to be that one, and he's not been. So I think Ross will go in there and fit in no problem. And I love that he's given it his best shot at Rangers, and he's thought it's time to go. He doesn't want to just hang about and be a Rangers player. He wants to go and make a career for himself. And I love his attitude. He looks a good boy, and I wish him all the best.
Yeah, good shout. Thanks to Stuart Craig, who says, keep the subtitles on. It's the only way we can understand you. There you are. That's the type of humour we like. We don't mind Stuart getting absolutely battered on this programme, because that's the joy of it. It is, of course, football. We want to enjoy it and have a bit of fun as well. So, but I'm led to believe the subtitles are not on. It's only at the start for some people, but everybody else seems to be okay on it. Anyway, we try every day to put them off. Somebody at Facebook comes up with a great idea that they want to put subtitles on, and Peter Roughie's football show suddenly becomes Pizza and Rollovers football show. Roughie, I can't help it. That's all I'm telling you. Maybe I'm speaking too quickly. Anyway, good luck to Ross McCrory up at Aberdeen. Will that be a blow, Roughie, to Hibs? They thought they were in there.
Yeah, I think they thought they were really in there. I think they were first to move on him. And obviously Aberdeen came up with a better deal. It'd be interesting to see what the young boy thought of his choice. You know, obviously I think both of them are tremendous clubs to play for. Maybe he just thinks Aberdeen, with the new setup, the training session and everything that's happening up there, had to be something he wanted to be involved in. But no, either of the two of them would have been a fantastic move for them, but I think Aberdeen obviously offered him a better deal all round.
Yeah. Just before I forget, Hugh, there's a number of people who put forward people that they think should have a statue outside their ground. One that's an absolute stonewall certainty for me, which I am amazed it hasn't actually gathered pace, is Walter Smith at Rangers, because surely, okay, he didn't get the full 9, he joined it after Graham Souness decided to go to Liverpool, but when you think of Walter's contribution, I would be gobsmacked if somebody didn't put that forward and it gathered pace.
Yeah, I think, I would agree with that. Particularly, not only his first spell, but the second spell was hugely successful as well, Peter, and sort of more or less culminating a European final as well. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised that. The one I think that sums it all up though is, the famous 5. Absolutely, definitely, Peter. There should actually be a statue in Edinburgh to the famous 5, because if we go down the road of praising politicians and writers and artists, correctly so in my opinion, football is essential to the culture of Scottish cities, and I think the famous 5 should be an Edinburgh celebration. But just to illustrate, I think if anybody talks about what is the sort of bar, what bar have you got to be a player and get a statue, and I would say Pat Stanton. That would be my argument. Pat Stanton.
Yeah, Pat Stanton's another one, but I'm almost certain, there's other people who come up with lots of worthy suggestions for their club. You might want to give us your thoughts on it. Listen, amazingly, and this is maybe a touchy one, but would people look at Motherwell and think the Motherwell captain is worthy of it? Possibly no, because Tom Boyd's affiliation with Celtic. Would they think Tommy McLean? Possibly no. He's not even in the painting they had to commemorate the 91 side. I wonder, is it the Ansel Babes? Is it something? I don't know. I'm not suggesting every club has to have a statue, but it's interesting. If you've got your favourite team, give us your thoughts on it as well. For me, at Morton, I'd have a statue to Andy Ritchie, just to remind people that you can be slightly overweight, Roughie, but so gifted that you can basically take the mickey out of anybody who comes on the park. Because Andy Ritchie for me was just fantastic. I loved him as a player. Yeah,
Candy be up there. There's no doubt about that. But I'm sure there'll be a lot of Morton people would have other names of a lot of success they have. But no, Andy's the one. If you say Morton, you say Andy Ritchie. It's just the other thing as well. When you start mentioning all these teams and that, you start looking at where would it go outside the stadium. You know, because a lot of the stadiums aren't really picturesque the way they are at Parkhead and Ibrox. So it'd be interesting where you would actually put them.
By the way, Tynecastle and Easter Road are fine outside, Roughie. Tynecastle's got a nice side, but Easter Road's got a nice outside.
Oh, I can think of a couple of places.
Yeah.
And I would think as well, Peter, sorry to butt in, but Fir Hill, all you need to do is do roughly the top of the stand like Christ the Redeemer, you know, in Rio de Janeiro. Just have Roughie standing on top of the stand, his arms outstretched. Maybe a little glance behind him with his arms outstretched, but I don't want to go down that road.
Yeah, well, to be perfectly honest with you, Hugh, let's not liken Roughie to Christ the Redeemer. Look what happened to John. Look what happened to John Lennon when he said he was bigger than Jesus. We don't want to start a riot on here, Hugh.
But the other thing is both Roughie and Jesus didn't like crosses either, Peter.
No.
Yeah, absolutely, and that one could get you in trouble. I'd like to apologise to every critic whoever watches this show.
I would actually, since we're naming names, I would actually throw Partick Thistle names into the hat. Dave McParland, John Lambie, and Jackie Husband. You know, three legends of the club.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Well, he's got to stand.
So,
he's got to stand.
As long as they three are in the back, you know, in the back of the stand. Mine's in the front.
You're quite happy with that, yeah, absolutely. I have to say, I must apologise to everyone. This has possibly been the worst show ever for people interrupting. We've all been jumping all over each other's head on this. This is usually we're all calm about it all, but we're all absolutely battering each other. Anyway, just out of curiosity, Roughie, Craig Gordon, he managed to put you into 4th place in the all-time goalkeepers, and now he looks as if he could be in line for cap number 55 because they're talking about him in line for the Scotland-Israel game.
Yeah, no good. I mean, I have to say now that he's overtaken me, good luck to him. The injuries and everything and what he's done since he come back is absolutely incredible. It is amazing. Just remind me who's the three in front of me?
Well, Leighton's one of them.
Yeah.
Jim Leighton's ahead of you. Who's the other keeper? Help me out here.
I think it's just Craig Gordon.
Is it?
I think it's Craig Gordon.
Oh, is it just Craig Gordon? So you're in 3rd place now.
I'm hanging on. But I think David Marshall's growing a few caps. So let's hope Craig Gordon gets back in as soon as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I would just say thank you to Andy Penman, who I think has stolen the show here, because he says at least Christ the Redeemer managed to save something. So you see, they pick up on every word.
No, I have to say, Hugh, in all honesty, when I was at Partick Thistle, there was a big banner in the Partick Thistle stand that says, "Jesus saves, but Rough always gets the rebound." Yeah.
Well, it's quite unusual.
Yeah, you couldn't make that up. You couldn't make that up.
Well, with all due respect to you, Roughie, they did make it up. It was for George Best, I think, in the 1960s originally.
Well,
unless
somebody can tell me differently. Hugh, I mean, I think I can remember.
The way I heard it, I heard the one I heard it was because this would work out very nice. It was Liverpool in the 60s, Peter, and it says Jesus saves on a Liverpool on our church. Underneath it was scrolled, but St John scores, which of course would make absolute sense because Ian St John of Motherwell was playing for Liverpool at the time.
Ian St John. Every time I hear that name, I think of a wonderful player, Darren. But I actually think to myself, I also think of the weekend I spent with him in the Rutland Hotel, absolutely bladdered, and I realised that I was not a Champions League drinker. I can tell you. It's as soon as somebody mentions St John to me, I think I don't think I've been ever as sick as I was for the 3 days after he left. It's as simple as that. So thanks.
Company then.
Yeah, a great.
I think I'll stay with company. Peter, here's one. Now, I could be wrong. Does Kenny Dalglish have one?
No, I mean, don't. Well, he doesn't have one. He's got a stand named after him, but he doesn't have one outside Hampden, which I think is a good shout.
Yeah.
You know,
Kenny Dalglish has got to be.
And to be fair, I know.
And Liverpool.
Yeah, Liverpool, Scotland, and to be fair, and I know this is slightly controversial because Kenny Dalglish and Danny McGrain were my heroes and idols when I was a young boy, but you know, Dalglish left Celtic when he was 27. I mean, it's not as if he hadn't given them, you know, good years. He'd given them a lot of good years to 27. The pain that was felt when he left, it took them over a year to recover from it. But, you know, maybe Scotland and Liverpool's enough for it. Yeah. Can I just say, Roughie, I've got a photograph here, Roughie. You would sell your soul to every sponsor possible, wouldn't you? Somebody sent me this in on Facebook. Look at you. I mean, Skull, I'd never tip it over the bar. Did you get a few quid for that, Roughie? Did you get a few quid for that?
No, that was a player's pool. I did that for the pool, and all the money went into the pool for that one, yeah. I think it was a World Cup promotion.
Ah, see. Basically what you're telling me, Roughie, is Kenny says there's no danger you're getting the money on your own for that. You'll put it in the pool.
I did sell my soul in after the Brazil game. After the Brazil game over in Spain, I was in my room and my phone went, and it was an agent, and there was this. I think it's still out there now. There's a new headache tablet called Headaches, and they were about to launch it, and they wanted to put my name to it, and. I did sell my soul that morning. I said, why not? It was after the Brazil game.
Yeah. Roughie, for me, Darren, it's like Gareth Southgate when he did the pizza advert. I'm thinking to myself, go on, Gareth, make as much money out of it as you possibly can. You and Stuart Pearce, it's hard at the time if you have a missed penalty, but you know, you got to look back, and if you can make a few quid out of the fun of it, then by all means do so.
100%, yes. Gareth Southgate was on the television on Sky getting interviewed, and they were still talking about it, Peter. It's just they talk. It's like the Beckham sending off still gets spoken about. So if Gareth and Stuart Pearce have made some money out of that, and Roughie's made some money out of it, fair play.
It's funny, actually, over the last 24 hours, Hugh, we were talking about the miss that Raheem Sterling had for Manchester City. And I mentioned Peter Van Vossen's miss in an Old Firm game. It is amazing how sometimes a moment in time, as Darren's just mentioned there, can unfairly define you in people's memories, because automatically in the 70s, people would make songs up and remember Dixie Deans for putting the ball over the bar against Inter Milan in a game. It's amazing how things stick in your head about certain people. Stuart Pearce and Chris Waddle. Gaza missing from about an inch against Germany that would have taken them through. All these little things in football that shouldn't define you, but some people actually look and think, oh, I remember you for this.
Absolutely, and football's brutal that way, Peter. You know, I bet you Chris Iwelumo, the Scotland striker, who's now a media person, I bet you every time he does an interview, he's just saying, he'll be sitting whispering to himself, "When's it coming? When's it coming? When's the question coming?" Because he knows at one point somebody say to him, "Hey, you're about to be a little bit disappointed, Chris, with that one," you know. And I'll have talked about it so many times, you know, and there's little moments that crystallise careers, you know, like they go on for decades, but you'll be remembered for 1 second, you know, of, I don't know, inattention, carelessness, bad luck.
Yeah, Gary Adam and Hugh Scott have just mentioned Chris Iwelumo, and Niall Kane as well says, does anyone remember the miss? Of course, we've had Roughie Chris Iwelumo on the programme, and he's fairly philosophical about it. I mean, he doesn't look upon the miss as, you know, something that defines his career. He looks at it as saying, well, I got there, I was in with the chance, it was a bad miss, but then I put myself forward again for the next chance.
Yeah, but I think he didn't. I didn't appreciate when we said, "What, you having a laugh?"
No, he's a good. He's a good lad.
I was still celebrating 15 seconds after it.
Yeah,
I thought it actually went in the net. I'm still convinced it went in the net.
Yeah. Karen Pringle says, Peter, what about Roberto Baggio's miss in the World Cup? I mean, that's the ultimate. The only thing I would say about that, Darren, is who cares? You're Roberto Baggio. You know, when you look back in your career, I mean, a right good
the penalty.
Boy. Yeah.
The penalty when he blasted over the bar.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen,
we
talk about... Sorry, Roughie?
Who missed the penalty when the turf moved? Remember the turf sort of gave way when he took the penalty? Was that David Beckham?
John Terry?
Yeah.
Well, Beckham and John Terry. John Terry slipped a wee bit, but eventually it was saved by Van der Sar. But Beckham, they reckon, when his standing foot went down, the turf was, you know, moist at that point and not as you know, hard as it should have been, and it put him off balance.
But Peter, you're right about Baggio, an absolute world-class player. But it just shows you sometimes it's a World Cup final, but he was a world-class player. Pressure gets to the big players sometimes as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Platini.
Baresi missed as well.
Platini would put one, yeah.
Yeah. What was Platini's, Roughie?
I thought he missed one in a World Cup over the bar.
Yeah, he may well have.
For France.
I don't think he'll be remembered just for that now, Roughie.
No,
to be perfectly honest with you, the penny will drop with Hugh on that in a moment. But yeah, I mean, listen, there's lots of players that have that moment where you cannot believe that it's happened, and then people go, "That's what I remember you for." Anyway, I don't know if you watched it last night. It's been incredible because every night there's been a game where I try and justify to myself, you know, can I get away with watching this? Hugh, it was 5-0 for Inter Milan. At 1-0, I thought, am I going to persevere with this? And then they just battered Shakhtar Donetsk. And Donetsk are a shadow of the side that I watched maybe 8, 9, 10 years ago. They had no ambition whatsoever.
See, I think the problem with Donetsk was see when it started going against them, Peter. It's a much overused thing, but there was no cohesion amongst the players. There was no just like spirit to go and sort of really compete. Whereas I always think the great quote about Italian clubs is that, you know, I think it was Pirlo himself that said it, was that Italian players always beat games as their job. They treat it as real seriousness. They don't treat it as enjoyment necessarily or as any kind of fulfillment. They just go out there and do a job, and that spreads to players like, you know, Lukaku, for example. But that spreads through the squad. That, you know, this is a serious piece of work we've got to go in. I watched it as well, Peter, simply because that's who I am. I watch football all the time, and I was like you. I was thinking this is now going to be 1-0. An Italian team winning 1-0. This is going to drift for 90 minutes to 1-0. So I was very pleasantly surprised as the goals went in.
Telling you about players that have a moment that defines them, I'm going to disagree with this one, although, you know, for people of the last 5 years, they might think about it. Darren, Stuart Carruthers has just said, what about Steven Gerrard's slip? Now, being a real Liverpool fan as well, it was one of those gut-wrenching moments that your kind of a heart stopped. I can still remember him slipping, and I think it was, was it Demba Ba? Eventually
Yeah.
eventually went through and scored for Chelsea. But knowing the history of Steven Gerrard at Liverpool, I don't think it defines him. The only thing I automatically think about when I think about Steven Gerrard is 30 yards out, roof of the net, bang, goal, because he's got a catalogue of them that are unbelievable.
100%, Peter. Yeah, if you're talking about Steven Gerrard, you're talking about the FA Cup final at the Millennium Stadium. You're talking about getting them back in the game for the Champions League final in Milan. People, when they bring up Liverpool winning the league, yes, that will get brought up. There's no doubt about it. But people in football, people that know football, when you mention Steven Gerrard, they'll look at those wonderful moments that he had. I mean, hundreds of wonderful moments at Liverpool, and before they think of the slip.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my favourites of all time that I think of, Hugh, and it was only possibly because I was at the match. Liverpool and Everton played an FA Cup tie at Anfield, and the Everton fans were giving Gerrard pelters, and Everton had scored first, and it was at the time where he was involved in some kind of fracas in a pub. So as is the wont of the fans of the opposition, they made it out as if he was going to jail in the morning. So they'd made up a song, and I kid you not, Hugh, they gave him dog's abuse for the entire game. But he was outrageous. I mean, he dragged this Liverpool side. He literally covered every blade of grass, and then he hit an absolute peach of an equaliser at the Kop and ran the full length of the pitch to the Everton fans, turned his back, and then just pointed to his name. And I thought to myself, it's the ultimate noise up, isn't it? If you're getting pelters and then you score the goal.
It's fantastic. That's what footballers must love. I love that about football as well. But see, going back, Peter, to the perception of Gerrard, every opposition fan, I would say non-Liverpool fan, will use the slip, because there seems to be a thing that you've got to deride your opponent. So the slip. But every Liverpool fan, I think, will just have one word. They'll just say Istanbul. Another thing about it, just to reinforce that point, is every Scotland fan, certainly those of a certain age, when you ask about Ray Clements, they'll gleesh through the legs. Every England fan and Liverpool fan will have their own memories, which will have nothing to do with Dalglish's shot going through their legs. So there can be defining moments, whatever side of the fence you're on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Peter, being a player, that's the kind of things that drives, and Gerrard thrives on, the Everton fans giving him, because he's got the ability to drive his team on, drag them out of the position they're in. That's why he was a wonderful captain as well for Liverpool.
Listen, I think I've got to say right now, Paul Crawford has nailed it. He's nailed the ultimate one, which I don't think anybody can argue with it. I mean, Paul, you've put a lot of thought into this, and I think the minute I mention what Paul's just said, it will come back to everybody, especially Roughie. We'll talk about misses and things that define people. Paul Crawford says, what about Diana Ross? Her miss in the opening of the World Cup's got to be up there as a very bad miss. All she has to do, put the ball in the back of the net, no goalkeeper, the goals disappear, and the fanfare continues and the World Cup goes on. And I think you're right, Paul. I don't think I'll ever listen to Ain't No Mountain High Enough or I'm Coming Out without thinking of that miss from Diana Ross in the World Cup. You're right. Well done, Paul. You win today with that mention. Now, just a couple of things that I want to get your thoughts on, guys. Of course, I'll get a prediction from you on the score tonight, but what about Joe Hart, Roughie? If he jumped out of a window, he got the way with a salmon in his pocket. It's just signed for Tottenham.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. He's obviously going there as a backup, and the price that they're paying down there for keepers, I think it would just be the wages that he'd have to deal with. He's certainly got something in him, Peter. He's a top-class goalkeeper. Yeah. He's been one of these goalkeepers, it's been unfortunate that I think that particularly English supporters haven't taken to him, particularly well. But I still think he would do a job put in there. There's no doubt about that. So, I think he'll do well there if he's given the chance.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, Ruffy, Mike Collins has just mentioned something that we always laugh at because with Scots we know it was a quality strike, whereas Jimmy Hill described it as a toe poke. Dave Neary will forever be remembered. I mean, for me, he was absolutely top drawer as a Dundee United player. But you know, that shot. I mean, what were you thinking when Dave Neary had that ball at his feet and he put it in the roof of the net, Ruffy?
Well, obviously, I thought they were going to get annoyed. Would have just annoyed them. They were they were just strolling about, you know, just waiting for their chance. And obviously, us scoring first, I think they just upped their gear a wee bit and decided to just run away with it. But you're right, it was a tremendous. He actually hit it with the outside of his foot. It was a spare. It wasn't a volley. It was sort of he had to hit it pretty quickly, and it was a tremendous hit. And I'm surprised we don't talk about that more. I know we talk about it, but I'm surprised it's not up there, you know, with the great goals. So obviously we talk about the goals that Kenny scored and we Archie and that. But I mean, for me, the David Neary goal must come maybe third best goal for an all-time Scotland, unless you can think of others.
Oh, it's a great goal, Roffy, but it's not third, for God's sake. I mean, I could think of Dennis Law scoring a few in games for Scotland as well. But listen, great argument. I mean, you're a keeper, you're there, you say it's third. That's good. It's a great argument. Listen, a couple of things before we go, lads. Just basically, Hugh, I read this in the Sunday Times at the weekend. The Scottish top flight clubs potentially lost about £22 million from that whole.
How did you get that Times that on Sunday?
Why? Why?
I went in and there was none left.
Well, I don't shop in your area, Ruffy.
No,
to be honest
it's just a paper. It's just a paper I love buying on a Sunday, you know, and there was none left.
Yeah, well, that was well worthy of interrupting us, wasn't it, Hugh? I was going to say they reckon the research that's come out, £22 million lost by the top flight clubs when the league was unable to finish with no fans in the games, and the league being called.
Yeah, I noticed as well as an addendum to that, Peter, that my club in Germany, who normally post anything between 10 and 20 million of a profit every year, Borussia Dortmund, they dropped £45 million, and they're finished, of course, but finished without fans. Yeah, it's an incredible effect. One of the strange things, Peter, is it's probably a thing for another programme, but do you remember, you know, like 6 weeks ago, which is another age in Scottish football, when everybody was saying, we'll never be able to buy a player this season, we can't do this by certain club chairmen. Lashing out fees left, right and centre at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, it is absolutely incredible. Pleading poverty, clubs that potentially could go down to the wire. Although I would say something to you, we're living on the basis of hand to mouth at times. I think the one thing that's the key in all this is when we were talking about the championship and clubs that were going to go. I remember Les Gray saying to me, anybody suggesting that the championship clubs are going to fold is wide of the mark because 7 or 8 of them were owned by wealthy businessmen. So he said, that's not going to happen. They're propping them up as we speak. So I understood exactly where he was coming from. Partick Thistle also fell into that category. But there was a good 6 or 7 championship clubs who were propped up by wealthy businessmen. The problem now is, I think, that the clubs in the top flight who've lost a considerable amount of money, and remember, I think the report at the weekend says Celtic lost somewhere in the region of 7 million. They lost the most amount of money out of the league not finishing. But they're trying to peg it back. They're trying to get it back, and that's the difficulty. If we keep going on without fans, this will become really scary. But nevertheless, they're still managing to buy players, Darren. That's a great point that Hugh makes. Suddenly from the Armageddon, it's not Armageddon.
Yeah, Peter, I think that's the businessman, Peter Lawwell, how well he's done over the past years, buying players, selling players. A few years ago, getting in the Champions League and all that, and yes, they're probably the biggest wage bill through all this that they've had to pay, but they've been very good. He's been excellent with his dealings and with the money he's brought into the club, and I think that's how they're they'll survive and they'll still keep buying players, especially this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, couple of things quickly to finish. There is a great there's a great story, and I'm not making this up, guys. There is a great story in the Evening Times, and it's basically that the 77-year-old Democrat Joe Biden, according to a report in CNN, has chosen for Secret Service agents to refer to him as Celtic. This is his code name. So when you read that, I mean, honestly, it's gone into meltdown now that he's decided to use that as his code name. I can see this going. This will gather pace all the way across social media. It's in the Times, but that's great, Hugh, isn't it?
Well, that just means that my first reaction, my first headline to that as a newspaper man would I'd be changing it to the President's 11.
Yeah, I'm waiting to see how that grows arms and legs. Just one footnote. We're talking about debt. Roughie, if you were Messi, would you leave Barcelona? Because they reckon they've accrued somewhere in the region of 700 million euros of debt. Poor buys, no real direction under the current president. I can't even say it. Under the current president. And Messi possibly in the last 2 or 3 years of his, I can't say prime because some players would think 29, 30 is your prime, but certainly 2 or 3 years of still having to make a huge impact. Would you go if you were him?
Like, there's no doubt Barcelona are a massive club, and for to be there so long and he's established himself, we all know what he can do. I just would think I need to go to another country and show people how really good I am. And that's the stage I'd be at. I don't know where that would be. I don't know if it'd be Germany or England, but I certainly would. Just that you said there, I think they've wore that side down. Like the big players, and they've just rested on their laurels, and quite good laurels at that. But no, I think at that stage, I would be saying I'm going to show some other country, how good I am, and let the supporters judge me there.
Yeah, it's amazing. We'll talk about standards, Hugh. Barcelona are going mental because they've been knocked out, trounced at the quarter-final stage by Bayern Munich. Messi has been, I think he's won 4 Champions Leagues. It just shows you the desire and the never-ending hunger that these clubs have to keep spending, to keep going beyond their means. The wage bill at Barcelona is 70% of the income that they have.
Yeah, and you imagine there with merchandising and broadcasting. The thing about Messi, and I'm inclined to think that he'll stay and not move from Barcelona, is that in many ways at the moment, and he sometimes escaped this, and I'm always, Messi's part of the problem there. He can't, they can't just, you see on Twitter, poor Messi, Messi doesn't deserve this. Messi doesn't deserve to be in a team this poor and things like that. And you go, well, you watched against Bayern Munich, but Messi was poor. Messi was poor. And not only was Messi poor, Messi, towards the end of the game, didn't show the commitment that I would want from a player, whether it's 8-2 or 22-2. If you're the talisman of the team, the icon of the team, surely you can run about. There was a moment in the match, Peter, where at I think either 7-2 or 6-2, Muller lost the ball in the final third in Barcelona's final in the third. And he chased back to beyond the halfway line and attempt to get it back. That, for me, is the minimum requirement in a Champions League knockout match. And the whole of the Barcelona didn't meet that minimum requirement. And Messi was part of that.
Yeah, I agree with you, Hugh. If I could only offer some form of defence, which is quite simply, if you look at Barcelona over the years, you could write on the back of a stamp moments like that from him, because the wee man has dragged mediocre sides through games by his sheer genius alone. In fact, I would go as far as to say he's won them things that they probably didn't deserve to win, Darren.
Peter, I don't know if this answers questions, but they've got rid of Eric Abidal today. Now, you know there was a fallout there when Valverde was there, and Eric Abidal criticised the players for not playing for him. and Messi came out and said, name names. So there was obviously a fallout there, and he's gone today. So I think they're worried and concerned that he might leave, but they're obviously trying to do everything they can to keep him, which is under.
Yeah, well, he's 32 now. Piqué, Suarez in their 30s. I'm looking here. Busquets, 32. Alba, 31. The team's ageing. It needs freshened up. But, they're still got to try and sell these players and get them off the wage bill. Just a thought, €700 million in debt. No worries, they'll be able to continue. I'd love to know what the Barcelona phone-in is out at the moment. 700 million in debt, and they're raging because they've only got to the quarterfinals. We're doing cartwheels in Scotland if we can get to the group stages and anything. Anyway, apart from anything else, thank you to the thousands of people who've actually suggested people that should have a statue. You're absolutely right. Walter Smith, we agree. Willie Miller, we agree. Jim McLean. There are so many. The famous five, as Hugh says, at Hibs could be a good shout. Maybe even David Gray, worthy of a statue for that goal in that cup final to end such a long wait. Who knows? There are lots of people suggesting worthy people who've contributed to their club's history down through the years. Thank you for engaging with us on that. All that I would say is don't forget, like, share and follow on our Facebook and on the YouTube. You can subscribe. It's absolutely free. Join the football family. You'll get opinion. You'll get a bit of fun along the way. And every now and then you'll get a day when we all butt in because we're all eager to talk and have a right good ding dong. And we've got that today. Hopefully you've enjoyed the show. Stick with us. Don't suffer any of those copycats. Stick with us and we will keep you right up to date with football and give you our opinions, trying not to be flag wavers. I leave you with that note and say thank you to Roughie, to Hugh MacDonald, to Darren Jackson, from myself, Peter Martin. Thank you for watching.
Expect the best used car deals guaranteed. Visit Arnold